of his farewell pilgrimage and of Allah's causing him to pass away unto Allah. So is history unaware of any part of that? And has the curtain of concealment enshrouded what is related to this supreme prophet and his prophetic mission? Indeed, all of what is attributed to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or is traced to him, whether it be a true statement or a falsehood fabricated in his name, all of it expresses who he was and what he did. All of it expresses this to scholarly critics of hadith, who establish principles for research, principles by means of which true reports are distinguished from false ones. Such scholars preserved the circumstances and affairs of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well as his states. They did not omit the mention of a single aspect of his life, describing how he stood, sat, and got up, depicting his appearance, laughter, and smile, narrating his worship at night and during the day, such that no aspect of his life remained undisclosed, no affair of his remained hidden, no secret of his concealed. So when he entered his house, all of his activities were recorded by his family, dependents, and children. And when he went out, he was observed by his companions. All of this is recorded and well known. In general, when the greatest of men returns to his home, there he is but a man among men and an individual among other people. But in the case of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he retained his majesty in all aspects of his life. 9 wives participated in his household. Each one of them had permission from the Prophet to speak openly about him to the people concerning what she saw in private. They were at liberty to report to people in forums and meetings what they had observed. So, has the world known such a man who has trusted himself so completely and relied upon himself to this degree, and who, because out of all of the people, he was furthest from evil, and who, because out of all people he was the furthest from evil, and who was not afraid of evil words spoken against him by anyone, because he was the furthest from evil? Has the world known such a man who has trusted himself so completely, because he was so beyond evil? This is what is related to the person of the Prophet. But as for the exaltedness of his character, the superiority of his intellect, the soundness of his opinion, the nobility of his personality, and the vastness of his heart, these are described in detail in the various collections of hadith. It must also be stated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not spend the entirety of his life among devotees and companions. Rather, he spent 40 years of his life in Mecca before being called to his prophetic mission. There he lived among its inhabitants, the polytheistic Quraysh. His profession was that of a trader. Day and night he would interact with the Quraysh concerning all matters of life and involving all the give and take that a life of commerce entails. Such interaction necessarily unveils the character of a man. Through such interaction, corruption and uprightness both become clear. This is the nature of life. Its road is long, its paths are rugged. Abysses block one's way, abysses of treachery, infidelity to promises, and illegitimate acquisition of wealth. Steep passes obstruct one's journey, passes of deceit, unfairness, low wages, and broken contracts. But Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam traversed these rugged and thorny paths, completing them unscathed and untainted, without being overcome by all that afflicts the masses. Indeed, Muhammad was continually remembering Allah Ta'ala, thanking Him and glorifying His transcendence morning and night. When he would start to eat, he would begin with the name of Allah. When he would sit with anyone, he would remind them to remember Allah by his own example in that situation. And when he slept, he would sleep remembering his sustainer and bringing to mind his bounties that he, Ta'ala, had bestowed upon him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Indeed, in the world there are two kinds of schools. One specializes in a particular branch of knowledge, such as medicine, engineering, business, or literature, and the other kind integrates all of these scientific and literary institutes into a university. The school of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is such a university, one which unites people in spite of differences in gender, language, race, and culture. It comprises all fields of learning and forms of knowledge. In it are generals, judges, governors, and rulers, as well as numbers of religious scholars. Among them were the companions of the bench, those who did not have a home in which to take refuge. Their only home was the courtyard of the mosque. They had no possessions except the tattered rags that were on their bodies. Among them were ascetics and pious devotees. They are the ones who are credited with preserving the Muhammadan prophetic mission, which they conveyed to those who recorded it after them and who became the transmitters of hadith and narrators of prophetic biography. These consist of various generations in succession, the companions, the successors, and the successors of the successors until the 4th century, when this historical treasury reached completion in terms of being collected, written down, and compiled in an organized fashion. The scholars began to write biographies of the companions, successors, and later generations who transmitted what was related to the life of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they wrote down their names, their surnames, their names of affiliation, as well as their origin, character, and their habits. In short, they recorded all of the affairs of their lives, to the point that what they wrote in this regard became a separate field of knowledge. In time, the custom arose that when preachers would cite sayings related to the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and would mention the circumstances of his mother, people would rise upon hearing this in order to extol his greatness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hafiz al-Ghaiti stated, and I quote, "This rising up had no basis in authentic hadith. Nevertheless, there's nothing wrong with it on account of it being the extolling of his greatness, ta'zim. Rather, it is a virtuous action, fi'l hasan, for whomever is dominated by love, hub, and glorification, ijlal, of that noble Prophet, upon whom be the most gracious blessings and noblest greetings of peace. How fine are the words of the eloquent Imam, the Hassan of his times, Yahya al-Sarsari, Yahya al-Sarsari al-Hanbali, in one of his qasidas, related to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Golden script on silver from the pen of the best of scribes is trivial as praise of Mustafa. Golden script on silver from the pen of the best of scribes is trivial as praise of Mustafa. That the nobles would arise on hearing it, arising in rows or kneeling when mounted. This is trivial